So tender, so juicy. It's like a bag of juice just came out. Today, I'm gonna show you how to make a butterball chicken. This right here is the juiciest, most tender butterball chicken you can have at home. No rotisserie required. A lot of people try to recreate butterball rotisserie chickens at home, but the real key is the brine that's used in the chicken. We can make a brine, we can inject it into our own chicken, and we can have our butterball chicken, same juiciness, same tenderness, just at home. So one of the keys to any butterball rotisserie chicken that you get at the supermarket, or a butterball turkey, for instance, is the use of phosphates. This phosphate in particular is sodium tripolyphosphate, or STPP. Now, STPP is great because it makes the chicken more tender. It also improves moisture retention, so you get a juicier chicken. A lot of people get sketched out by ingredients like this, especially ones that when they Google, it's like STPP is used in laundry detergent. The FDA has approved STPP for use, and they have requirements for concentrations that are allowable. As long as STPP makes up about 0.5% of the total weight of the bird, that includes the bird itself, the brine that you're using, any seasonings, things like that, then it's safe to eat. It's okay, you're in the clear. All right, we're ready to mix our brine. Get a bowl over here. One key thing about STPP is that it's a little finicky to dissolve in solution. For one, I wouldn't want to just dump this into the bowl and then pour water over it. It tends to clump really badly, and then you really can't just like whisk all those clumps out. So the best way to go about it is actually to pour our water in first, and then we're gonna disperse our STPP over the top, just like you'd be sprinkling like gelatin, like powdered gelatin, and blooming it in water. After about 30 seconds of whisking, you're good to move on. One really important point is that I'm not doing salt first and then STPP. STPP tends to not dissolve very well in the presence of salt in solution. So for that reason, it's good to dissolve it first in water and then add the rest of your stuff. So salt in. This is about 25 grams. This is 5% in a 500 grams of water. Give that a nice whisk. 20 grams of sugar, so a little less than 5%. Now the sugar is important here, mostly for seasoning. Why is that important? Well, when you're marinating or brining, salt is really useful because it can penetrate deeply and season deeply. The thing about sugar is that it's such a big molecule, it really doesn't pass through that first millimeter or two of meat. At the same time, it does help facilitate some browning, provide some background sweetness that's not overwhelming, but it's nice to have. So for that reason, I like it in this brine. Because we're injecting, it's nice to put it back into like a tall-sided container, something like a Pyrex or a Bane or anything like that, so you can pull the solution very, very easily. Let's get to prepping our chicken. So we got a raw chicken here. Just gonna plop this onto a bigger tray. First thing, we have to remove the wishbone. So removing the wishbone, pretty standard procedure here. Just make a small, not deep incision. Feel around with your thumb really on either side of it. Free it up. I can feel it's kind of free. I'll go on the other side. All right, so give this a little yank, and there's your wishbone. Now, it's often really helpful to remove the wishbone because it makes carving the breast off the cage a lot easier and simpler. For the injection, we have our brine that we made here, and we've got a syringe. Now, this is a syringe designed for brining specifically. You could also use a medical grade one with a really fine tip needle, but I actually found that this one was really nice because it has a screw top, which makes dispensing the brine really foolproof. Now we start with the breast. The breast is gonna get about 80 grams of our brine. So this guy goes up to, that's 20 mils right there. This only goes up to 30, so I'm just adding over time. I'm gonna go in the neck side, just straight in, and then dispense. And so that's 20 grams. You'll notice that I have the bird on a sheet tray here. One thing about this method is that despite it being labeled injection, you would think, oh man, injection, that's like super precise. It's not. We get it in there, but there's inevitably loss through the holes that you're puncturing, through the sort of interstitial spaces. What's important here is that we're getting some in. So another 20 grams on this side. Give this guy a flip. I'm gonna go through this part of the breast, another 20 grams. We're shooting for 80 grams total on each breast. So now we're at 60. This will finish it off at 80. So I'm going through the tail side, if you will, of the breast with 20 grams. When it comes to injection, the more holes that you poke, the actually drier the chicken ended up, possibly because you're providing more spaces for juices to sort of leach out over time. So I'm trying to go in the same spot every time. You just don't want to be going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like kind of indiscriminately. Now let's move on to the legs. Legs get 75 mils. So that's going to be 3 shots of 25. All we have left are the drums and then the wings. So the drums, we're just going to inject about 20 mils per drumstick. So how do we dispense it? So through this top joint, you'll find a hole, and then we inject. You'll see it kind of balloon up. Just keep going. Okay, our second drum. For the wing, you have the wing, actual wing, and then you have the drumette, right? So we got 10 mils. We're gonna do 5 around here, and then the last 5 in the wing. All right, so that's your injected bird. At this point, we gotta truss it. So what I like to do is transfer this out, and then we get to trussing. So we're gonna let this brine for about 24 hours, at which point we'll roast it, we'll pull it, let it rest for about 15 minutes, and we'll carve it. So our injected brine chicken has hung out for about 24 hours. As far as roasting goes, we've got an oven heated to 425 degrees with convection. We're gonna roast this until the breast registers around 145 degrees Fahrenheit, at which point we'll pull the bird, rest it for 15 minutes, and that carryover cooking will have taken the breast to around 155 serving temperature. Before this goes in the oven, we wanna make sure it's coated in a little bit of oil. I've got some neutral oil here, about 2 teaspoons, and just brush evenly. I'm happy with that. So this is gonna roast for around 50 to 60 minutes. We'll rotate it halfway through. Make sure to temp the breast, look for that 145 target, and then pull it. All right, let's check on our roasted chicken. Woo, piping hot. Now, for me, this looks really beautiful. I can see even browning across the board. Maybe even a little darker on the crown for sure, even at this point. But overall, really happy with this result. Let's get ready to carve this bad boy. So it's been rested for about 15 minutes, during which time the internal temperature of the breast has risen. So if you remember, we pulled this guy at 145. After 10, 15 minutes, I'd expect the breast temperature to be around 155, give or take. Let's get into this. We've got strings we gotta take off, so I like scissors sometimes, especially in a case like this where there's a lot of juice floating around. I don't wanna preemptively or prematurely puncture the meat if I don't have to. Just be careful here. Get our strings, take your time. All right, so let's get to this. One incision here, gonna fan out. Just press that down. Another incision. It's like a bag of juice just came out, like a water balloon. Make our incision down the keel, and then follow this line where the string was. It's a good guideline for me. And then just once over, flip the breast out. Same thing for this side. We have our 2 breasts on this side. Now we deal with the legs. The legs is pretty simple. A little less delicate of a situation. Just get the oyster, they come right off. Just kind of tease apart at the joint, and then that's your leg meat. At this point, all that's left are the wings, which I'm just gonna take off at the joint here. They almost just like pull right off, which leaves you a cage. You could take off these drumettes, go to the extra trouble, but for us, let's just focus on the meaty parts. So as far as separating the drum, pretty easy when it's like this, but you find the sort of articulation of the joint, just follow with your knife down. Usually if you hit bone, that's okay. You just kind of got to wiggle around, try and figure out where the joint is, and I was just right of it. Now we get into our breasts. I'm gonna go into thirds probably. At this point, the chicken is so juicy that I really am not looking for the skin to be crispy at all. In restaurants, oftentimes cooks will just make the sacrifice, meaning they'll leave meat on the cage for the sake of having a good serving portion. So that's what I did here, was where I came in a little bit with that truss line over here. But the reality is there's still some meat, right, on the cage. So one thing that you can do is come back in and trim it off. And I would just follow this line. So there's a bone, a rib bone on the bottom here. And so you just make some even strokes and kind of tease the meat out. So you kind of have to just take your time and tease this meat out. And so that would be some extra portions for serving. It's still really good to eat. It's just not as pretty. Drumettes, usually you want to come in on the other side where the joint is. I like to sort of just tease this out and then make light strokes, and that would be your drumette portion. So that's pretty good yields. The rest of this you can pick for sure. We'll save it for stock or something like that. Here's our finished Butterball chicken. We gotta try it, right? So here you go, right from the tender. That's so juicy, so tender, really well seasoned throughout. Just a hint of sweetness, which I really like. And that's all through the magic of STPP right here. You know, the best part about it is we made it, and you can make it at home through the magic of this ingredient, a little bit of injection, some time. Check out this recipe at ChefSteps.com. We got a ton of other roast chicken content coming out. We got a huge guide, got tips, tricks, other recipes. Check it out.
Subscribe to our channel and visit ChefSteps.com for more tips, recipes, guides, and tools to help you level up in the kitchen.